Welcome to episode 160 of the Sports Geek podcast. On this week's episode, I chat mobile, app development, fan engagement, and ice hockey with Priya from Yinzcam.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals.
And now, here's your host who has a voice for podcasts, or is it a head for podcasts? I'm not sure. Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I don't know if that's a compliment, but then again, I do write the intros. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to the Sports Geek podcast. Hopefully you're doing it on your favourite podcast platform. And you've left a review, right? I'm looking at my iTunes reviews. They're now at 111. Thank you to people such as Todd Cafflish for leaving one recently and boosting those numbers in the US. I've got 10 different countries that have left podcast reviews. If you haven't done so, please, I know how hard it is actually to do it in iTunes. So anyone who does leave an iTunes review, I am internally indebted. Thank you. Over 171 countries have downloaded. There's a whole bunch of countries that have just downloaded one episode. So if you're just this person that's traveling around the world and downloading the podcast, thank you. But if you're listening to this for the first and only time, try another episode. My name is Sean Callanan. You're listening to the Sports Geek podcast. If I haven't said that already, you can contact me via all the social channels at Sean Callanan on Slack, the Sports Biz Slack, that is, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, or you can contact me the old-fashioned way, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Really happy, as I say in the intro here, to catch up with Priya Narasimhan, and I hope I get that name right. I sometimes stumble over names, and I apologise in advance. Priya is the founder of Yinzcam, and it's very likely that if you pull out your phone now and look at the app that your team app that you're currently using, Yinzcam will be the one, or potentially be one of the ones on your phone. They've done a lot of work in the NBA and NHL and NFL in building out the app infrastructure, and now doing a lot of work over here in Australia with multiple codes, multiple sports and multiple teams. So it's been great to finally catch Priya. We discuss how hard it is to connect on our both busy schedules from a travel point of view and different time zones that we seem to be jumping around. But it was good to geek out and talk apps and development and how the Yinzcam story has started and continues to evolve and continues to grow. So I hope you enjoy my chat with Priya Narasimhan from Yinzcam. Very happy to be here in a historical Melbourne venue. We're at the Windsor Hotel. There's the chink of teacups in the background. I'm here with Priya Narasimhan. Did I say that name right? Did I make that up?
Narasimhan is good. Yeah.
There we go. See, so and we don't edit that out. It keeps the authenticity. You are the CEO and founder of Yinzcam. Many people who are listening will have one of your apps on their phone through the many sports teams that you're working with. I wanted to catch up with you. You've been very elusive. We've bounced backwards and forwards on emails. Just to show how elusive Priya is, I saw Priya on stage in Atlanta, and I didn't see her till I saw her in Melbourne last Friday. So because you were like a fleeting moment with me. But I'm glad we've finally connected and locked you down while you're here in Melbourne. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So what I want to do is get a bit more of the story. So, we've known each other for a long time, and I've followed the Yinzcam story, and kudos to you on what you've built out with Yinzcam and the teams. Take us back to the beginning. How did it all start?
Sure. So my history is I was born in India. I was raised in Africa, finished my high school in Africa. Went to the United States, as many people do, for higher education. So I got my PhD in electrical and computer engineering. Always wanted to be a faculty member. I like to talk, I like to teach. It was a natural fit for me. Went to Carnegie Mellon University to become a tenure track faculty member in electrical and computer engineering. Was not really a sports fan. Where I'd grown up on cricket, on rugby, on soccer, on all these different sports, and I'd stay up till 2 a.m. in the morning watching some of these sports overseas. It all changed when I went to my first ice hockey game for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was like religion for me. I went to my first ice hockey game in the stands, nosebleed seats. That's what you can get if you're a faculty member on a good day. And I just absolutely fell in love with the sport. It was transformational for me.
It is one of ice hockey and the NHL. It is one of those sports that's completely different live, like TV. And I think AFL is a little bit the same here. That TV doesn't do the game justice. You don't see the hits and the moves and the whole, because it is like a sliding chessboard, so to speak, and the physicality of that. Lucky to be in a couple of NHL games myself, and it's not the same as watching it. As much as it's great to be able to watch it on devices and things like that, the live element of the NHL is amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with both the AFL as well as the NHL. I think live, you see the athleticism in a way that TV doesn't just do it justice at all. And to your point, with both AFL and NHL, when you watch ice hockey, the sport is not where the puck is. And the same thing with AFL, the sport is not where the ball is.
Yep.
Right? The sport is often happening in another corner as the play develops. And that's what fascinates me with ice hockey as well, right?
Yep.
And things can happen out of nowhere. And I just love the way the crowd hangs in with every play.
So how did you, being introduced to hockey, start getting more into sport?
Sure. So when I watched that first ice hockey game, I think for me, that was it. I mean, at that point in time, it was something different. I'd go to a lot of games when I could afford them. Faculty salaries aren't great. And you've met me. Everybody else is taller than I am. So I would never see the goal, the fight, the save, anything, and I wanted something for me. So really, purely, I started this because I wanted something for me.
Yep.
And we couldn't fix my height, so we had to look another way. So did this with a research group of students, undergraduate, university students, graduate students, PhD students, who all were looking at how do you bring the fans closer to the game. It sounds like such a cheesy term, but it's really that.
But it was to solve your fan experience problems.
Yes.
From a height point of view, but you're like, I enjoy the game, but what can I do to heighten that experience?
What can I do to heighten the experience? And honestly, what can I do when the guy in front of me is taller than I am and he doesn't let me see the game and I want to get closer to it?
So just to give people context, what year is this?
So this is about 2007, 2008. In that build-up with the Penguins, we did a lot of trials as a university, primarily as a university research group with me as an academic. I have no background in the industry, didn't know the first thing about the sports industry. I was just a fan. This is when on the technology cycle, sports hadn't started rolling out the technology, so there wasn't Wi-Fi, there wasn't a lot of amenities from a technology point of view in a lot of stadiums, not just Pittsburgh, but just around. That's a brilliant observation, and the reason for that is, honestly, if you'd looked at us even as a research project, we weren't sure if we would make it as a research project. There was no Wi-Fi inside any stadium. Forget high-density Wi-Fi that people talk about today. There wasn't even basic Wi-Fi to connect to and see a few bars on your phone. It didn't exist. There weren't enough phones which had Wi-Fi on them. I mean, forget that. The penetration of Wi-Fi-enabled phones was about 20%. So my whole addressable market, if I think about it now, 20% of the 20,000 people inside a venue which didn't have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and didn't have data. So the DAS systems weren't there. You know, if you had a successful day and everyone turned up, then no one could get on the network.
Right. Absolutely. So this was, for all intents and purposes, a research project, an academic research project where the technology didn't support it, the platform didn't support it, the venue didn't support it. There was nothing really other than let's go explore if this idea will work. That's really what we started with. The Penguins, I mean, credit to them, they saw something, they believed in it. And they were willing to let us go in and put Wi-Fi access points as a bunch of students and faculty. They'd let us crawl up in there to put access points in, to try different things. They'd go out and ask fans, what do you think about this? They would let us go and sit in seats. The way we got people to use this was I would sit in a seat and 9 people around me would say, what is that? I'd get them on the system, and go to another seat and start again.
And that still needs to happen today.
Right.
So you're talking 9 years ago, and it's like, how do we get people on Wi-Fi? We show them. And you've got Levi Stadium. They have guys walking around with Geek Squad showing people how to open the app, connect to the Wi-Fi. Like, it's still something that needs to happen. And I think it's a bit of that low-hanging fruit in the stadium space of, hey, we've got this, or we've got this with our app. It's like, how do we get people to install our app? We bring them all to a marquee and we show them how to install the app.
We show them how, right. And that's literally what we did 9 years ago. I remember one game hopping almost 20 or 30 times from seat to seat, get a bunch of people on, they would tell their friends. So suddenly, every time I sat somewhere, 20 people would be on. Okay, move to another place. My job here is done.
Yep.
And that's literally what we did to get the usage. And even then, for us, we were thinking research project. What can I show? How much video can I squeeze on top of Wi-Fi inside a venue without drowning the network?
Yep.
How can we improve the fan experience? And we were really focused on it from the research side from day one.
So out of that research project, is that where Yinzcam was born? Is that where you go, this is where the opportunity lies? How did you make that leap out of academia into app development and, sports technology?
Sure. So we started basically by experimenting this way. There was a whole 2009 season that the Penguins actually let us go in every single game. I mean, I went in with my 2-year-old son at the time. We'd work every game. Literally, we worked every single game, myself and a group of about 10 or 15 people. And we'd work every game and we'd try different users. We would get their feedback. So really, this was looking at it again from an academic standpoint. What happened at the end of that 2009 season, I think it was in early May, there was a day when we looked at the usage and we saw fans watching several hours of replays for a game from 8 camera angles. And I looked at that and it was insane. I mean, it was unbelievable to us even at that point in time because we were thinking, what on earth happened? But because of that effort of going around and educating fans, suddenly everyone was watching every camera angle.
Yep.
And it was a high-scoring game. It was the Stanley Cup Finals. And we thought, okay, now we have something on our hands. What should we do? We went and talked to the Penguins, and the Penguins said, look, if you have this ready, we will roll it into our new arena. At that point, it was no longer a research project. It was, oh, wow, you want a product.
Yep.
So we made the leap from a research project to product. We went to the university, spoke to them. We spun it out of the university. And we said, okay, now we're a startup company out of the university. Let's go with the Penguins as our first client. So that happened in 2009, May 2009.
Terrific. That is exactly around the same time I started Sports Geek and started looking at the landscape and coming to the landscape as an IT guy, as a geek, going, where do I fit? And I thought I'll be potentially a developer, IT consultant, sort of help them figure out the database and the technology. And seeing you guys go, there's mobile app development happening over there, and that was my last job. I was playing around with developing apps on Apple, but that's when I went. The whole social digital thing was growing, and that's where I saw the gap. But yeah, at that time there was not much happening, from a big development point of view, and yeah, that app space was what do we do in this space? So you push ahead with the Penguins and roll that out, and then do you just start pushing your wares and meeting more teams? And because this is the amazing piece, that the amount of teams that you've done apps for, and again, kudos to you and your team for pushing that out. And so how did you go from one to multiple? Because in sports it's very much the case of, oh, they're doing that, we want one of those. And so it was a bit of people watching what the Penguins doing and then people knocking on your door, or a bit of vice versa? So
it was people watching what the Penguins did. The New England Patriots read about some of the work the Penguins were doing. The Patriots were rolling out Wi-Fi inside Gillette Stadium. We got a call from Fred Kirsch, and he really wanted to talk to us about how to do this. And the interesting thing inside NFL, as opposed to NHL, in NHL you have a sport that is moving really fast. In the NFL, you have a lot of time between
breaks
downs.
In play.
Right?
Yeah.
You have that, which I think is great. The second thing is you have this thing called the red zone channel, which is really, a set of fast plays that are back-to-back for every time you're in the scoring possession.
Yep.
So if you look at things like that, when you're a fan sitting inside the stadium at a Patriots game, you may not be interested in the game in front of you alone. You're interested in what's happening around the league because that affects your outcome in the playoffs.
Yep.
So,
we're talking fantasy games and, we've got to check my fantasy scores. Is Terrell Owens got a touchdown? I've got to check in on that kind of thing.
Right. So it's not about what's in front of your eyes because that is the prime product. That's where you showed up. Even in the cold, it's about what's happening elsewhere. So the Patriots said we'd be really interested. They looked at the technology. we started with them. They were our first NFL club. So immediately after the Penguins, it was the Patriots.
Yep.
So, which was interesting for us because then we rolled that out, I think, in late 2009, 2010 for the Patriots. And on the heels of that, then we had other NFL clubs come forward. So we had the Steelers come forward. We had the Falcons come forward. So we had these other NFL clubs that came forward. And once they were on board, it was almost organically inside the NFL.
Yep.
One club after the other came to us.
And it was around this same time. This is when Mark Cuban goes and says, I don't want people looking at my phones at the game. I want them to be engaged with the game. And I... half of me agrees with him because, if the entertainment on the court or the pitch or the field is not there, then it's not. But different sports have that natural downtime, and that's where you're saying where it's different from the NHL because it's like you'll see those spikes in the in the period breaks or after a goal where people are going to go, what happened? Or after a fight, what happened? I want to see a replay. Whereas there's so many. The NFL is built for TV. It's built for commercials. It's built for I'm going to tune away now. So that's the spot where you're just got to try to find those little app experiences to be able to put in the game, and Red Zone's a perfect one for that.
No, absolutely. And in fact, I agree with Mark Cuban's philosophy. If you've paid your ticket price, and tickets aren't cheap, right? If you've paid your ticket price, the primary product is on the court, on the ice, on the field, in front of your eyes. You should really be focusing on that because those players give everything they've got to that sport. And that's why you showed up instead of sitting on the couch at home. So that's where you should be focused. Having said that, you're right. The game is often punctuated by moments where you're sitting there saying, okay, well, here's a selfie moment. Because I've got time for that.
Yep.
So, yes, you are taking your phone out at all the times when play is not live. When I'm at a hockey game, I'm a different person. I am in there with every shift, every play. But I know the moment they stop playing, there's a penalty, something happens. I'm on my phone, talking to people, checking the scores, doing all those other things.
Oh, yeah.
And engaging people in that moment, I think, is priceless. The second thing is, in some sports, what matters is not what's happening in front of your eyes. What matters is what's happening elsewhere, in the same division, in the same conference, at another stadium somewhere else.
Yep.
And knowing what's happening there affects your outcome here.
Yep. And that is, whether it's a playoff race, a pennant race, or that kind of thing, or, as the rise of daily fantasy and that, and people are invested in other sports or other games, it is. Well, I better check in. So. You're at a point where you're rolling out into multiple sports and you're learning the vagaries of different sports and things like that. And the bit that I love about what you've done with your business is, as opposed to other app developers that are out there to go, and I've seen them pop up and go away from the sports space because we're app developers, we can do a sports app, and they don't realise, and this is why I started Sports Geek, they don't realise how different the sports market is. The resources of the sports market, the passion and the demands that sports fans make compared to a corporate. But then what you've also done really well is built out this platform where it makes it easy from a plug and play point of view. And this is the geek in me seeing your architecture to go, you want this piece and this piece. How much was that planned, and how much was that organic to go, well, this is our framework and it makes it easiest for us, because it was a really key point from a scale point of view for you.
No, absolutely. And I think part of it is you're driven by necessity. So here's the thing for us, right? We're not backed by a venture capitalist. I'm not a company owned by an owner with several millions in the bank. We have no marketing background. We're not from the sports industry. All we are is people who know technology.
Yep.
And if you really want to build an architecture stack, you always think modular.
Yep.
This is what is ingrained in you
Yep.
as an academic, as somebody who does technology.
Yep.
Because you're always programmed to think, how do you scale something? We've always approached it from that lens. So if you look at even us as a company, everybody is somebody technical, including myself.
Yep.
All of us have engineering backgrounds or design backgrounds, but that's what drives us. And so from day one, it was, okay, here's the thing. We don't have millions of dollars in the bank. The only way we can build this is if we can make it repurposable and configurable dynamically and make it scalable the moment somebody wants something. Point number one. Second, have our clients invested in the product. And by that, I mean, if they ask for something, build it, but build it in a way that it can scale.
Yep.
Because teams do like to follow each other, and if some team tries it, the other teams want it.
Yep.
But give them credit for being the first to do that. So really turn our platform into something where you crowdsource their innovation.
Yep.
And that's how they have basically a stake in the ground with us, because what we have is a result of their dreams, not mine alone.
Well, that's the thing, because it is a balance, because you want to say, here's a platform that has all of these cool features, but then you also have the teams going, we want our app to be different to other people's apps, which I understand, but I also understand that, it's probably only you and I that have all the apps on our phone, because most of the fans are like, I've got my app. I'm a Penguins fan. I'm not installing the Blackhawks app. But I understand, the teams want to push that innovation piece and say, we want to do this thing or try this type of thing. And you're just providing that platform to do it and enable them to do it, and then see, provide that, you're really going back to the start saying, here is our research project on this new feature. This is what it does, everybody. Would everyone else want to do it? And that's sort of been the way you've gone and done it?
Yeah, we've done it in both ways, right? One, because we still have such a huge R&D arm with our connections to the university, we're always coming up with new ideas. If you asked me 18 months ago, we did not have an augmented reality platform. We decided we'd take a bet because we were excited by it. Personally, just, again, excited as fans. So we went exploring. We built a bunch of things. We went to our teams and said, does anyone want this? A bunch of hands shot up. Suddenly we had an AR play.
Yep.
We had an AR platform, and I could tell you a dozen or even 20 different teams are doing something with AR with us right now.
Yep.
Out of nowhere. So there's us pushing what we get excited about personally as technical people. Then there's teams saying, I saw this over here. Hey, I was reading this article in the Wall Street Journal. This is a great idea. Can we do this? And we say, okay, that's great. That's wonderful. Let's do it. Let's build it. You get the credit for it. But when we're done, can I take your permission and give it to the other teams as well?
And the good thing is now you've got this vast network of people sourcing the best practice. They're like, I was just using the music experience app or a retailer app, or I was overseas and I was in a holiday and I found out a store doing this. And so all of those ideas are flowing back to you to say, well, these are all the things, right? So that becomes a long list.
It becomes a long list.
So how do you manage that list? Are you from a back of the house point of view, are you very much agile, saying, hey, we're going to stack rank these and we'll get everyone's say, and these are the three things that we can do and these are the ones we can't do? How does that sort of work behind the scenes?
So very much the case. We let our clients drive our roadmap. And fundamentally, I sit here today because we've had clients who believe in us, pour their best ideas in, and say they'll believe in us to do anything. I mean, Cavaliers, great example. We didn't have a virtual reality platform. Mike Conley of the Cavaliers says, you want to build it?
Yep.
Sure, Mike, why not? We didn't have an augmented reality platform. You want to build it? Sure, Mike, why not?
Yep.
And it's the fact that they trust you and are willing to take bets on you. You would do anything for anyone who takes a chance on you.
Yep.
And we exist today because of teams like the Cavaliers, the Warriors, Penguins, the Steelers, all these people making bets on us and hanging in there and almost saying, even if it's not your wheelhouse, you guys are so technically capable, I think you can do anything.
Yep.
I've got a great idea. I know you're not doing it now, but do you want to?
Yep.
And, there are teams that routinely do this with us. Patriots is another great example. They're always bringing new ideas and our platform grows.
Yep.
And asking about prioritization, we let clients decide what stays and what goes.
Yep.
Right? Clients get to say, these are the 5 things I want you to work on this season. Okay, great. Are all of you on board with that? Okay, we'll go work on it then.
And that's the beauty of, the geek in me, that's the beauty of Agile when you say, okay, the customer, here's the 100 things you want. No, really, pick the top 5, and they're the top 5. Because we physically can't do all the 100, but when you're getting buy-in to say, these are the 5, AR and VR and all these, you go, cool, these are the ones we can do. And so it does get that buy-in and investment just from an ownership point of view, from them to say, this is what we want and this is what we're asking for.
They drive our roadmap. And more importantly, every year the platform has always grown. We are volunteering features almost at no additional cost and saying, we don't like the platform to stay stale. And again, that goes back to the technical person in you, right? You'd get bored if something stayed the same year after year.
Yep.
So we would get bored if it stayed the same year after year. So we're constantly saying, hey, we went off in the off season, we built these 5 new things, you should all get them.
Yep.
People are like, okay, that's great.
Yep.
So there are 5 new things you came up with. Now it's our turn. We have to come up with 5 new things too.
So that's the US market and how the product and the platform is developed. as I said, you've been coming backwards and forwards to Australia and to Melbourne, and we keep either crossing each other in plane flight. I'm going to LA while you're coming to Melbourne, or where I'm in Sydney when you're in Melbourne. So you've started doing a lot of work here with clients. I was working with the NBL when Larry Kesselman and Jeremy that took over the NBL, and the amount of work that they did. For the people listening, it's like they got the keys to the NBL 100 days out. And they said, we need a new website. We got a new website. We need a new app. And they go, we've called Priya and Yinzcam. I said, oh, cool. You'll have the app. It'll be delivered. And sure enough, it was delivered, a couple of weeks before the season, and it had streaming. And the fans were like, what is this new league? Because you're able to have that turnkey. Here's the thing. How have you found venturing into the Australian market with all the different codes and learning the different sports here? How is it similar and how is it different?
So I think the similarities are, every sport wants to keep their fans happy.
Yep.
So there's stats, there's all the stuff that you can, take for granted from video and other things. So going back to your point with the NBL, it was fascinating and fun working with them to stand up something out of nothing and then say, well, you know what? At a certain point in time, everything, including the back-end infrastructure, is going to be new.
Yep.
But we're all hitting this date together. So I really, really enjoyed that process of going from 0 to 180 with them.
Yep.
I think that was just phenomenal. Telstra's been a great partner to us. So we started with Telstra on the NRL apps, and Telstra's been phenomenal in, again, doing similar things to our clients in the United States, where they say, well, here are our priorities, but hey, what else do you have cooking?
Yep.
And if you have something cooking, we'd love to try it. So, for example, on the NRL Live app, for State of Origin, there was AR, and there was augmented reality with face painting. We have clients who try to push the same envelope, which I think is great. So what's different? What's different is what's fascinating to me personally. The focus here on membership is huge.
Yep.
When I walk into any clubhouse, that number is tattooed over their door.
Yeah.
And it's such a great reminder of this is what matters.
Yeah.
And it's a great reminder of the fact that your fans are what matter. That's the number that everybody judges themselves by. I found that utterly fascinating. The first time I walked into any of these clubs, it's like, that's the number.
It's very much a badge of honour, especially here in Melbourne, with 9 teams, but it has been the lifeblood. And, and I've said it on the podcast before, I think Melbourne does membership marketing better than anyone in the world. And I think Sydney has caught up rather quickly, and the NRL teams are following down that path. And it is more of a personal identity piece than a sales piece. Just the slight twist of saying you're a member of the club as opposed to a season ticket holder. And we're starting seeing some of that actually being moved to the States. There's, the Kansas City Chiefs and that are now calling their fans, their season ticket holders members to feel like they're a part of a club. And it just becomes an ownership piece. And so if it's part of your identity, you're not looking at how much did I pay for my Collingwood tickets. It's like, well, no, it's in my Twitter bio. There's gifs of me dancing as a Collingwood fan. It's like, I can't not be a member. And I think they do that really well. And it does become their everything, and the app is part of that.
No, and I love that. I love the concept that you walk in through the door and the number above the door is the number of fans. It's not about your roster. It's not about your history. It's about how many fans do we have, and how many fans have declared their loyalty in a really, really substantive way to us. And I just found that absolutely spectacular, and I really like that. I was out at the Saints on Monday. You walk in through the door, you see the number, and then on the walls are lists of all their fans' names.
Yep.
Like, you matter as much as the player roster does, if not more, because you have a lifetime of loyalty.
Yeah, and I think that's where the Australian-New Zealand market is very similar to the European market in that it's that tribal element. And not to say that there's not tribes and, super passionate Warriors fans or Raiders or Packers fans. There are, but it's sort of, that's where it leans into that first, as opposed to, the entertainment. I'm going to a game and it's part of the entertainment experience. I think that's where the Australian market is a little bit different in that sense.
No, and I love that. I think that's absolutely fascinating. And what's fascinating is fans will show up at a game for the purpose of the game, right? It's not about, like you said, it's not about the entertainment. Don't get me wrong. Concessions are important. Amenities are important. The video boards are important. And they will be.
And the match day experience is being improved. And the Big Bash is a good example of all this stuff that's been put in there. And people are going for the experience. But what you're seeing is that tribal nature is starting to lock in. People are saying, I'm a Stars fan, or I'm a Thunder fan, or I'm a Strikers fan, because that's the culture that we know. So that's, and so how do you start trying to bring that into the app culture and into the ecosystem of your app?
Right, and I think that's where it's fascinating and very, very different. Because how do you replicate something that's very visceral into something digital, right?
Yep.
Because that's what it is. They're not thinking about amenities, concessions, anything else. They're thinking about how you recognize them on an equal footing. And if you look at the AFL club apps, I mean, they do a really, really nice job prioritizing membership. I mean, if you look at an AFL club app at the bottom, you'll see that there is a menu tab called My Club.
Yep.
So which is a fifth of the app is for you the
Yep.
fan, your headshot, it's your identity. You log in, and that's where you're rewarded for every single thing you do as a fan, and you're special.
And so the part that's been difficult, and it's not just an Australian problem, it's the same in the States, is trying to migrate those fans from what their current experience is into the new experience, and to say this is what's available. And, as a AFL fan, you're used to getting your card, you're used to putting it around your neck, and if the app experience, if the roadmap potentially is, well, maybe your card goes on the app, that's potentially where it might go. Maybe we'll scan via the app. Maybe there'll be ticket transfers and stuff like that. These are all the things that are potentially available, but part of it is the education process of, hey guys, this is what our app does now. And it's like the bit that fascinates me in the app space is the marketing of the app. Like a lot of the clubs go, cool, new app, and they push it out. And they go, cool, we've got the new app, guys. But they don't keep, saying, we've got a new app. Oh, and this is what it does. And so those teasers to, if you go into your app and you click this button and you can do the VR experience, or you click on the app and here's some special content. How is that problem being solved? Because that's the bit that, like, when I'm talking to teams and like, you've got a new app, like, and that was the thing, with the NBL, you've never had an app. It's an awesome app. What we've got to do is tell everyone about the app, and keep telling everyone about the app, because it's hard to get people to download apps and use apps.
And that's a phenomenal point, because I think what needs to happen for that awareness is the app needs to be a part of every club's workflow for what they prioritize, which means your membership workflow for how you renew, how you sign up, how you track tenure, how you do invoice renewal, how you send them the scarf, all that stuff, which is number one, top of mind, and there's entire departments in some of these clubs focusing on that.
Yep.
They need to say where the app is in that workflow. That every time they take an action to print a flyer, it needs to go in there. They do this, it needs to go in there. Because if you look at the airline industry is very similar. And now I cannot think of a flight that I print boarding passes for. I would consider it ridiculous to do so.
Yep.
And it's not for the fact that I don't like the pretty commemorative ticket for the fact that I flew all the way over here. The fact is, it's a convenience thing.
Yep.
And it's educating people, and nowadays everybody does this. The Qantas app is one of the best ones out there in terms of tracking wait times, tracking everything else.
Yep.
It's making people aware that that is a possibility, and that this is a first-class item in your membership workflow.
Yeah, and the thing is, all the traffic is moving to mobile and to apps. I mean, the Mary Meeker report recently to say, 4% of our attention is in print, but 12% of the ads are in print, right? That's money has to move eventually. But the space in the mobile space is 28% of our attention is in mobile, but only 21% of the budget is. So, like, there's this opportunity, because that's where the people are moving. They're getting more transactions and session times on the mobile than desktop. The desktop numbers are falling across the board. Doesn't matter who I speak to, whether it's somewhere in Australia or Europe. That's what's happening. They're going into the apps, and it's about making that app experience and the fact that the good thing is you have got all these apps, whether it's Qantas or I use TripIt and it tells me where to go, and there's my thing. Like, you just expect the apps to do all the pieces, and that's where the ecosystem of, well, this will be the way I can, I want to see the Nathan Buckley press conference. I open the app, click the button, there it is. And the demands, like, there's no more demanding customers, and I think this is where the non-sports developer comes in and goes, gee, these fans really demand. Oh, yeah, of course they are. There's hundreds of thousands, and they expect the earth. And 8 years ago, these teams did not have any people producing all this content and all of that stuff. So, I think it's only going to keep pushing harder and harder, and as leagues and ticketing solutions and that start integrating into the app, we're still going to have people faxing in their membership renewals and that. But the, just the simple switch, and I think it was, Dan Harbison at the Trailblazers way back when, he said, yeah, we just flipped them all over to digital tickets. And you know what? The adoption rate was really high because we just flipped them all over. So I think there's a few of those flicking of the switches that are going to happen over the next couple of years across the board where people just say, this is the digital ticket. And yeah, I'll probably pay $20 to get my card. So I've got another card. And so I've got 20 of them after 20 years. And it just becomes an upsell.
And to your point, I mean, if you look at every other industry that has happened, right now, how do you brag that you've been at a game as a fan? It's your phone.
Yep.
Nobody's bringing an old-fashioned camera and printing out Polaroids and handing them out.
Yep.
Because it stays, right? So there's a sense of permanence that digital gives you. That the only way people are bragging when they're at a game, taking pictures.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's important. I mean, 2 years ago, I think I was at the game for the Bulldogs, the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs.
Yep.
It was their back to Belmore game.
Yep.
It was phenomenal. Everybody's into the sport. People are sitting on banks of grass, no seats.
Yep.
Everybody's in there. But the moment something stops, people are still taking pictures.
Yeah.
Right? That's their go-to device. The team has every right to live on it too.
And it is very much that getting those fans connected from a digital point of view is something that, early on, it was like, we got to get the fans to share and post and say they're at the game because it tells everyone what the awesome live experience is, right? And so, the live experience is the pinnacle of sport. We talked earlier with the AFL and NHL. It's like, well, how do we best enable, hey, this is where I am, And so it's part social, it's part the app. And I think it is part of the solution of, well, people aren't going to the games. It's like, well, you don't have to match the lounge room experience, right? Because the NFL is the best example. It's probably best to sit in your lounge room on your recliner with your big screen TV with able to flick to the red zone. And it's like, well, don't try to compete against that. Try to sell what it's like to be there, creating that cacophony of noise when, it's a fourth down and your team's trying to defend. That's this, that's the goosebumps on the back of the neck. And so, how can the app and the whole total fan experience be, this is why you're here?
And again, I really agree with that because I would never have started this journey if I'd never gone to a live game. I mean, I watched hockey on TV and it would be one of the channels I'd surf.
Yep.
Right? I go to a live game and you have that epiphany. And I lose myself when I watch hockey. I yell, I do all the things you're expected to as a fan. And I love the part of me that I lose myself completely. Yep. And I think that's really what it is. But how do you amplify that for people?
Yep.
And I really think at the end of the day, I agree with people who say technology shouldn't get in the way. But it can amplify it because that's how you brag. That's how you remember.
Yep.
You see, how do I bottle up the anger I feel at a bad penalty?
Yep.
I can't bottle it up, but I can take pictures and yell later.
And I think it was really interesting. Shane Harmon did a really good panel at Seat where they were interviewing fans, and because we, as geeks, we can get caught up in the bells and whistles and, oh, wow, we need to put in these and we'll put a beacon there and we'll buzz every time someone walks past and stuff like that. And trying to get that balance of how much is too much, what, and how do we just augment what's there? Like, so when I open it up, maybe I just want to click the button, and so when I walk to the line, the hot dog's available. Or maybe I want to be able to click the button and get the replay of those kind of things. How do you balance that piece to find out how much is too much, or do you just go back into research mode and go, I'm going to look at the numbers and see what people have done?
And I think you go back to really your mindset as a fan.
Yep.
I mean, you're a Collingwood fan. You have to act in the moment as a Collingwood fan. It's the things you remember. I mean, looking at your Facebook feed, I mean, you're posting pictures of every major play, or when you're bummed out, you're posting pictures of that.
I go very dark after a bad win, a bad loss, or a draw, or worse, a draw. I just don't read anything. I stop watching stuff. But that's the emotional highs and lows,
right? Because
they know I'll come back.
Right.
I'll be next Friday I'll be up and about.
Right. And that's what defines you as a fan. So I think it's not so much the stats and the plays; it's the stats and the plays from your eyes.
Yep.
And that's what's personal. And how do we get the mobile apps of their clubs to actually reflect that?
So, like when, from talking to the discussion, 2009 and Wi-Fi, the discussion of how it happens, I think it was like 2011, 2012, I think Steve Connolly at the Red Sox said, Wi-Fi is just utility like restrooms. And so it's becoming that. And now we're seeing this acceleration of technology when you think, it's going to take 5 years. And it's just getting shorter and shorter, and we're all going to be watching with interest what happens with VR and AR, what happens when the next iPhone comes out, what Google do with their phones. So what excites you in the mobile and the app space going forward?
So I think two things we're excited by. One, I think, is obviously things like augmented reality. And I think the reason for that is it's something that appeals to the fan on their couch at home. It also appeals to the fan inside the venue. It's something that I think you can amplify their experiences differently, but still make them feel closer. And more importantly, I think you can make them feel like they're playing against each other.
Yep.
So the Cavaliers AR game that we built for them, it's fans at home playing against fans inside the stadium in that communal moment. I think it's really coming back to what's special about a live game. It's not just the performance on the field. It's the fact, it's that tribal communal moment where you're all screaming with one voice, where your anger is amplified by 20,000, 40,000 other people. Your joy is also.
Yep.
You hug strangers at these games.
I've hugged a few strangers in my time at sports teams.
And that's
sports
what
games.
it is, right? And how do you bring that about? I think, how do you bring that joy or that anger about? And I think AR has the ability to do that, except you're playing against each other and you're amplifying the game. I think that's important. The second one we're really, really, I think, rabid about is, and people talk about this word, it's overloaded, it's personalization, right? It is overloaded, but if I'm thinking about, say, a first-year member versus a second-year member versus a third-year member, they're all different.
Completely.
We cannot just say they're members.
Yeah.
They're not just members. A first-year member behaves very different from a 10-year lifetime member who's seen the highs and lows and is still hanging in there for the championship.
And, and it's different from, I know where I'm going to park or how I'm going to get there. I've very much got my routine. Whereas, and you'd think after doing 156 episodes, I would have my phone off. You'd think that, wouldn't you? So the personalisation thing is, super important. And I think it will develop, and I think that's where the next piece of build out of the digital teams will come, because you'll have to build out all this content to support that personalisation, but that personalisation will pay off in fans being more engaged, deep dive, whether they're at home or in stadium. We're already, apps are already morphing and being different when they're in stadium as they are at home. And I think the personalisation piece is really key there. The last thing I wanted to get before I got to the closing five to wrap up. Now that I'm getting phone calls in the middle of my podcast. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
The one that I remember is that Penguins game.
The Penguins game?
Because I'm sure I attended several as a kid, but they never stayed with me in quite this way. This, for me, was, I think, something completely different.
Yeah.
The second thing, and it matters just as much because I'm a mom, is when I watched my son watch hockey.
Yep.
And when it was his first game, it was different for me then as well.
No, it's good. It is good when you effectively tell your children that this is the sport that they will love, and they adopt it. And that's one of your rights as a parent. As someone who's my father told me that I had to barrack for Collingwood, and I told my son he had to barrack for Collingwood. But that's good. You've been to a lot of events, a lot of different stadiums. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food when you go to different stadiums around the world?
I think it differs with different stadiums, but I'm a sucker for nachos at any stadium, and I'm a sucker for pierogies at some of our Pittsburgh stadiums.
Okay, very, very good. What's the first app you open in the morning?
I'm a runner, so it's my Nike running app. It's the one thing that I'm obsessed by. I open it up and decide what my running route is. And Melbourne, by the way, is an awesome, awesome, awesome place to run it. I
have been seeing you've been running around the Tan and then around the gardens and stuff like that. If I was a runner, I would do more of that, but I'm not a runner. As someone who's, I'll keep blaming my torn Achilles from a couple of years ago, but I probably could run more. Do you have someone that the Sports Geek podcast listeners should follow, and why?
Jeremy McPeak. And, I've known Jeremy forever. I mean, the Suns were our first NBA team.
Yep, I've mentioned, and Jeremy's been on the pod and mentioned him many times, mocking his son's webmaster Twitter handle. When we both started our business, we're like, that's how you put the landscape in. You say, that's where it was. Jeremy was the webmaster at the Phoenix Suns. And I love the story he tells where he got the facts saying, we're starting a website. And congratulations, he's now working with you guys at Yinzcam.
Yeah, I'm really proud and privileged that he would even want to come and work with us, which I think is outstanding. And I mean, I love Jeremy for a number of reasons, but it's just, his ethics, his integrity, the way he communicates, and the way he's always thinking about, I think, the fan. I mean, like every single experience. They were one of the first teams, the Suns, to do, a contest around the NBA draft where their number one draft pick would give a fan a call.
Yep.
I mean, imagine thinking about the fan in that moment where the player got drafted.
So his role at Yinzcam, what will that be?
So he's working with us on the business development side as well as managing all of our NBA clients. So really overseeing all of our NBA, WNBA clients.
That's a pretty sweet gig. He's just going around catching up with all his friends, travelling around, watching basketball games. Get to work, Jeremy. So lastly, what social media platform is your MVP, whether it be personally or whether you're looking at it from an industry point of view?
I use different social channels for different things, right?
Yep.
So the Twitter ones I use because it's very much business oriented, or I'm talking about articles I like, and you're also limited by the number of characters.
Yep.
My personal one is all Instagram.
Yep.
And I like pictures more than anything else. And I think there's so much you can convey in that one moment that's emotional in a picture that you cannot with how many of the characters you stuff in there.
And it's funny. It's increasing like at rapid rate. And yes, it has got the power of Facebook behind it. But more and more people, when I ask that question or just in general conversation, are saying, Instagram. It's a bit of I can switch off a little bit. I can take in the photos and double tap and look at a few things. And then the fact that Instagram Stories is providing a different perspective, both from a team point of view, but also what people are doing. There's just no stopping it at the minute, and it's like, it's going to be interesting to see what development Snapchat do to stay in that space. I'm not counting Snapchat out as far as where it's going, but Instagram and overall, it's just a powerhouse.
Yeah, and look at the way people have changed their habits around it, right? They're now on your phone is a square option for a photo. People start thinking how to take pictures in a square format. And you look at some of the Instagram channels. I mean, I follow the National Geographic one. Every morning, I take a look at the pictures they've posted. It may be a little teddy bear or it's a gigantic glacier, but your mind is blown.
Yeah, and that's the thing. One of the parts of the presentation, I'm doing the recap of all the networks. I can't remember, so it was probably from Facebook where they said on Instagram people are following one of 6 passions. So it's it's different to Facebook where you're going, I'm into sport and technology, but I also like travel and I also like animals, or I also like exotic locations and that kind of stuff. So you can get that feel of that, and it is very easy to consume. And it's a bit of I want to switch off, just check in with what people are doing. And it's really good in that space. Yeah,
no, I do like it for that. And I mean, I use each of these differently. Facebook is keeping in touch with friends and seeing what they're up to. Instagram is it's really emotional. It's it's things that really stir something in you. To your 6 passions. I follow a runner's world. I follow National Geographic. You pick your 6 things, and those are the images that move you. It's the images that move you. Twitter and LinkedIn, I treat them more or less the same. It's informational.
Yep.
It's both the fire hose I take in and the one I put up.
Yep. So how can people, connect with you, follow you? How do people find you on the internet?
It's Yinzcam Priya is the handle on all the different social channels. So Instagram or Twitter, any one of those, LinkedIn.
If you see Priya in real life, it's like a rare sighting. Say hello, because I think if we're comparing frequent flyer points, I think Priya's got plenty on me. But I'm good. I'm really glad that we're able to catch up, and hopefully it's not. We'll catch up at another continent soon, and hopefully it's not as long between conversations.
That sounds great. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being a friend. Thank you for following us, and thank you for encouraging us every bit of the way.
Cheers.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Priya. You can send her a tweet. Please do tell her that you've listened to the podcast. Yinzcam Priya is her Twitter handle, and she has since joined the Sports Business Slack group. So I hope to see her popping her head up in some of the channels there to discuss what's happening in the mobile space. And I think it's going to continue to evolve. as we discussed there, things like AR and the like are going to continue to evolve. And what Priya's done with Yinzcam, as much as a platform as opposed to an app, it really allows teams to leverage those newer technologies because we've got a really solid foundation there. So thanks again to Priya, and thank you for the tiny little Pittsburgh Penguins Stanley Cup that she gave me when she was here in Melbourne. So I look forward to Pittsburgh is one of the places I have not been to yet. So I look forward to catching up with my friends at the Penguins and seeing a hockey game there at some time. Until next week, I won't give a recap of Podcast Movement. I was there last week when this gets published. There will be further recaps from Podcast Movement. I'm recording this before heading off to Los Angeles. So until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.
Join over 1,000 sports business executives in Sports Biz Slack. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack.
Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes.
Find out how to drive between $8,000 and $30,000 in profit for each digital campaign you sell sponsors. Check out sportsgeekcampaigns.com. Just like Jimmy Butler, you can call Sean anytime at 614-407-0407-200.